Shattering the ego to achieve liberation.
Hello everyone, welcome back to today's analysis. Today, we are going to dive into a super fascinating case study that might completely shatter and disrupt our everyday cognitive perceptions. Imagine this for a moment. What if a person, from the exact moment of birth, hits the absolute SSR great grand prize of life lottery? They possess a flawlessly irreproachable, drop-dead gorgeous appearance, paired with top-tier, peak talent. This sounds like the absolute ultimate winner of life, right? But what if I told you that the so-called perfection actually mutated into the single greatest psychological barrier of his life, almost destroying him completely? This is exactly the story of Not a Human that we are going to decode and break down for you today. Alright, let's cut straight to the chase. Can absolute perfection truly morph into a curse? In our daily lives, we definitely assume that looking stunning and being exceptionally gifted is nothing short of a fast-pass ticket to success and happiness. However, in the ancient textual records we are looking at today, this completely overpowered, cheat code-like advantage evolved into an extremely dangerous arrogance, pushing our protagonist step by step toward the edge of a cliff. Chapter E: The Boy Named Not a Human. The stage of our story takes place in the ancient Indian city of Shravasti. A super wealthy couple gave birth to an utterly perfect child. How perfect was he? They quite literally named him Not a Human Amanusha. The literal meaning is that he completely transcended ordinary human boundaries. The ancient texts record that not only did this child possess skin of a radiant golden hue and a flawlessly beautiful countenance, but even more absurdly, he was an absolute mega genius. Whether it was literature, astronomy, mathematics, calendars, or various arts, the moment he looked at it, he mastered it. In modern terms, he was basically the ancient version of an ultimate, peak-tier mega-influencer. His fame was so massive that people from all 6 major cities of ancient India went completely wild for him. Every single day, there were endless, non-stop lines of crowds queuing up just to catch a single glimpse of him. Add to this the fact that his parents raised him on the most luxurious, top-grade milk, yogurt, and butter cakes. He was living quite literally at the absolute pinnacle of the social pyramid. But have you noticed the trap? The problem lies exactly right here. This zero-flaw perfection was secretly nurturing a psychological time bomb. In Sanskrit, the state is known as adamana, which is what we call extreme arrogance, or overweening pride. This guy began to genuinely believe, I am the one and only supreme king of this entire world. He looked down on absolutely everyone. He refused to interact with a soul, let alone respect anyone or bow his head. Inside his tiny micro-universe, not a single person on earth was worthy of his respect. Chapter R: Shattering the Ultimate Ego. Watching their son expand into the state of ultimate ego inflation, his parents were actually terrified. They realized this was a fatal crisis. If they didn't intervene immediately, this child's life would be completely ruined. So they came up with a psychological strategy that was absolute textbook genius. They knew that going head-to-head with his stubbornness would never work. Therefore, step 1 was to clearly recognize the danger of reality. Then step 2 was the most brilliant move of all. They decided to reverse engineer his psychology. They chose to directly weaponize his exploding vanity by forcing him to go see what true perfection actually looked like. How did his parents make their move? Their words cut right to the bone. They straight up called him out. You think you look stunning and that you're so incredibly special. Let me tell you something. If you were to stand right next to Shakyamuni Buddha, your appearance wouldn't even match 1,000th, 1/10 of a thousandth, or even 100,000th of his majesty. Can you imagine the impact? To a super handsome guy who genuinely believed he was number 1 under heaven, this statement was a nuclear-grade psychological strike. It instantly triggered his intense refusal to lose and exploded his curiosity. He went totally frantic, thinking, how is that possible? How can there possibly be someone who looks better than me on this earth? I have to go verify this with my own eyes. Thus, carrying a massive cloud of arrogance and leading his massive entourage of followers, Not a Human set off in a fierce rage toward Shravasti to track down the Buddha. However, the most cinematic twist of all occurred. The absolute split second he caught sight of the world-honored one's indescribable, majestic, and sublime physical form from afar. Boom! the seemingly invincible fortress of arrogance in his heart completely collapsed and vaporized into thin air within that single second. Look at this absurd reversal of data. His arrogance meter instantly crashed from 100% full directly down to absolute zero. And what replaced it? It was a 100% massive, overwhelming wave of joy and faith. He was completely, utterly defeated in his heart. He walked up to the Buddha in absolute surrender, casting his entire body to the ground in supreme prostration. The Buddha saw that this young man's mindset was fully primed, so he cut straight to introducing the core Dharma. The result, relying on his naturally sky-high intellect. Not a human instantly shattered arch deeply embedded false views of the ego, directly realizing the fruit of the stream enterer. Later, with his parents' full blessing, he was ordained into the monastic order and ultimately extinguished every single shred of mental defilement, becoming an arhat. Chapter 3, The Hidden Karmic Blueprint. Now, as the story reaches this point, is a massive question mark popping up in your brain. Wait a minute. The progress bar of this narrative skipped way too fast. Why on earth was he born with such toxic arrogance? And why could he completely drop his ego the very moment he looked at the Buddha from afar? In fact, the bhikkhus who were present at the scene back then were just as bewildered as we are. This brings us straight into the deeper mechanism behind the plot. Chapter 3, The Hidden Karmic Blueprint. The Buddha's answer back then was profoundly shocking, directly piercing through time and space. He pointed out that this was absolutely not the first time not a human had played this exact script. Let's do a comparison. The similarity is so high it is downright ridiculous. In his present life, he was born in Shravasti to ultra-wealthy parents as an arrogant, handsome young man. Now, rewind the clock back into the distant past. He was born in Varanasi. His parents were highly revered Brahmins, and he was likewise a boy who completely looked down on the world simply because he was exceptionally handsome. This is a 100% historical replay. In that past lifetime, his Brahmin parents were also driven entirely crazy by this guy's arrogance. Later, they caught word that deep in the forests of Varanasi, there lived an ascetic seer who possessed 5 supernatural powers, and whose appearance was extraordinarily sublime and non-human. So, his past parents utilized the exact same reverse psychology trick to lure him into the forest to meet the seer. And here comes the ultimate karmic plot twist that is just absolute perfection. Do you know who that exceptionally beautiful seer was? Yes, it was none other than the past life of the Buddha. And that unbearably arrogant boy was the past life of not a human. The moment the boy laid eyes on the seer, the plot unfolded identically. His arrogance was instantly pulverized. A massive joy welled up in his heart, and he immediately followed the seer into monastic life, eventually mastering the 4 dhyanas and 5 supernatural powers. This actually teaches us a profoundly deep truth. Our deepest mental habits and behavioral programs continuously leap across life cycles, trapping us in an infinitely repeating loop. Chapter 4, Echoes of the Past. To make the entire thread crystal clear for us, the Buddha added the final piece of the puzzle right here, unveiling a truly grand vision of a soulless trajectory. Not a human didn't just practice in that single lifetime in Varanasi. In yet another profound past life, he had also ordained as a monk under the guidance of Kassapa Buddha, putting immense effort into taming and disciplining his own mind. So, have you caught the revelation? It was precisely these bit-by-bit accumulations of self-restraint and discipline from his past lives that laid down an incredibly powerful foundation for him. This is exactly why the moment his eyes met Shakyamuni Buddha in this lifetime, that latent potential instantly detonated, allowing him to realize the fruit of arhatship at lightning speed. Chapter 2, The Real Cost of Arrogance. Let us gather all the narrative threads we've explored and examine the absolute core inspiration this ancient text is trying to pass down to us. Right here lies a highly incisive commentary by the master. The beauty and physical form of this worldly realm are exactly like falling blossoms in flowing water. They vanish in a flash. It is utterly unworthy to cling to temporary beauty and give rise to an arrogant mind. This phrase means that no matter how stunning your external appearance is, how high your talent is, or how massive your fame is, these worldly advantages are exactly like falling petals in drifting water. They are gone in the blink of an eye. If you white-knuckle your entire sense of self-worth onto these superficial, skin-deep traits, your inner world is actually completely fragile. Furthermore, this arrogance will absolutely blind your eyes, blocking you from seeing higher dimensions of wisdom. At the very end of our analysis, I want to turn this exact mirror toward every single one of us. Think about it in today's society, which is completely flooded with digital filters, where everyone is desperately chasing view counts, metrics, and superficial, glamorous presentations. Have you, or have we all, unconsciously tied our core value and pride tightly onto some falling blossoms that are bound to vanish in a flash? In reality, there may be no such thing as absolute perfection in this world. True strength often stems from the profound humility that arises after you have completely looked through these illusions. I hope today's breakdown of Not a Human brings you some unique cognitive sparks and reflections. That wraps up our analysis for today. See you next time. Bye bye. The content of this educational analysis is organized based on classical Buddhist behavioral cognitive records. This material is proudly shared by the Buddha Activity Association of Australia.